So I switched over to food because of this major grassroots effort to get some transparency in the food industry with GMO labeling. So in April of 2012, I joined the Proposition 37 campaign as the media director. And by then, we were just announcing that month that a massive grassroots effort of many of them women, many of them moms who had never been politically active before, had joined the effort to get that on the ballot, which took getting nearly 1 million signatures in just 10 days. So think about that. It was a massive effort and a massive groundswell of people just willing to go out and stand for what they believe in politics. So that campaign was distressing because you can see here the polling was almost 70% for the entire duration of most of the campaign. And that number was true nationally. It was true of both political parties, all political persuasions. There was massive bipartisan support for GMO labeling across the country, and these were the numbers in California. But you can see what happened there. It was actually October 1st that his support took a nosedive. So October 1st was when the No campaign, which was funded by the largest chemical and food companies, Coke and Pepsi were big supporters, Monsanto was the largest donor. They spent $45 million, most of it in the space of 30 days. It was a massive blizzard of disinformation, confusion, false information, false claims coming from everywhere. I mean, they could barely spend the money, and it's really expensive to campaign in California. So we're talking like TV ads all over the state, radio ads that would play like every 3 minutes. You know, massive poster boards and billboards and this and that and the other. And so that was not the most fun month of my life. It was pretty upsetting to see all that happen and to try to stay positive. And we lost. We lost that campaign. And it was a surprise to everyone. But we were interested in how did they do it? What just happened and how did they do it? And particularly, how are the same incorrect messages rolling out from so many different sources that you're like surrounded and just so many people who, for example, believed in GMO labeling and wanted it were convinced that this wasn't the right bill, it wasn't strong enough, so they voted against it. So anyway, we wanted to know how did all that work? How is the money, is there a money flow? How are these universities connected to Monsanto? So we decided to do our public records request investigations, and we started looking. And they did not like that. And so since the beginning, and I want to give credit where it's due to my colleague Gary Ruskin. He was the campaign manager for Prop 37, and he's my co-director at US Right to Know, and he really started it with his tried and true public advocacy tools of using FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act requests, to find information and to really be relentless about it and look at professors who weren't expecting it. And it was controversial. And I was on maternity leave. My son was born in the fall of 2014. So I came back part-time to US Right to Know. We launched it 5 years ago, as I said, in 2015. And we were immediately attacked from all sorts of areas, which was kind of astonishing for a new group. There were stories in Wired magazine and Nature Biotech Journal saying how we were attacking scientists and all this. So we knew we were in the spotlight. We knew we had a target on our backs. It's like, this is fun to come back to this, like, let the games begin. So we knew it was happening, but we only recently found out that there was this coordinated campaign that they wrote about and engaged the entire pesticide industry in to try to discredit us. And so this document came out in just August, this past August. And it came out of the Roundup cancer trial, so that's been another major trove of documents that have come out of those trials. Hundreds of thousands of pages looking at Monsanto's past and communications and PR plans and all this. So this was one of them, and it's the U.S. Right to Know FOIA Communications Plan, saying USRTK's plan will impact the entire industry. We need to coordinate closely with Bio, CBI, GMOA. So Bio is the major biotech trade association with a budget of almost $100 million every year. CBI is an offshoot, which is the chemical companies getting together to figure out how they're going to spin the story on GMOs in food. So they all get together and they figure out how are they going to discredit this group. But here's the key about why efforts to bring transparency are so important. Because they can't tolerate it, as I said earlier. And they say in this document that any situation related to this issue has the potential to be extremely damaging. It will impact the entire industry. So, we knew then that what we're doing to shine light on their work with academics in particular was what really had them going. And this document goes into quite a lot of detail about how they might respond, how they should respond if people start asking them about their relationships with academics. So they say, for example, there was suggested answers to questions that might come up. If somebody asks you about the money we give to universities, basically don't tell them the details about the money we give to universities. Tell them about how we value academic partnerships, and tell them that we donate according to the rules of the university. Okay, that's true, but most universities, and a lot of people don't know this, most public universities have foundations that are nonprofits. So that foundation can take corporate donations, but not disclose them. So many of our land-grant universities that work on agriculture they're getting massive funding from corporations. You can't find out who funds what. You can't find out what do people get in return. What do these companies get in return? So we did find out some of this in our investigation. We found out, for example, that the University of Florida was getting over $10 million a year from chemical companies. And they had a professor there who claimed to have no connection with Monsanto, who had actually submitted a PR proposal to get paid by Monsanto to promote GMOs. And so that all came out, and that was actually one of the first things that we did. It was a front page story in the New York Times that came out in September of 2015 that talked about how Monsanto was mobilizing academics to fight the GMO labeling wars. So, in this document, actually, they said, if anybody asks you about the University of Florida funding, just say, I don't have access to that information. So this was, the top CEOs at Monsanto were and executives were being advised, don't tell people that we know what we know that's already been exposed in the public. So, yeah, again, just a crazy amount of not telling us what's really going on. And this was some of the headlines that have been generated from our investigation, 3 investigations in the New York Times. So the first one I just mentioned, academics enlisted to fight the GMO labeling wars that looked like they were coming from independent academics. And that's a big push of the companies trying to promote these folks as independent, not connected to industry, whereas we see in many examples, many more than reporting in this story, the behind-the-scenes dealing. In some cases, it was payments. In some cases, it was paid speaking engagements. Often, travel is paid. Often, even if it doesn't involve payment, though, there's support through public relations. So PR firms are promoting these guys, getting them into media outlets, making their careers shine, winning them awards. So we've also looked at the soda industry and influence that they have in the US government at the highest levels of CDC. And there have been, well, the new CDC chief, she did resign. Also, there were some other resignations at CDC after we reported that these folks were working with industry allies to try to figure out, for example, how to get the World Health Organization to back off talking about sugar as a cause for obesity. So, similar to the mites, it's the Varroa stupid. When it comes to bee deaths, with obesity, it's that you all need to exercise more, stupid. It's not the food, it's not the sugar. It's that everyone needs to exercise. So all of the tactics that I talked about that they did on bees, you'll also see in obesity. The front groups, the funding research, the deploying high-level famous scientists, researchers, buying ads, working with media, doing panels, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it takes to keep this system going. Just an entire full court press of propaganda lying.